Welcome back to Craft and Cocktails. I'm your host, Chris Werner. Today, we're spending time with lighting designer Andrew Schmedake. I've got questions. You've got questions. Let's get right to it.
Could you talk about the people starting early in your career through maybe even currently, who were mentors to you? Who gave you opportunities? Who led you down the road?
I think one of my most formative mentors is still a lighting faculty member at UC Santa Barbara, Vicki Scott. And she was the one who advocated for me to go ahead and go to grad school right after undergrad, which is what led me down this path to where I am today. She's been an inspiration for me, and it still is where I teach now. I guest lecture at UC Santa Barbara as my way to give back to my alma mater. And it's kind of wild that I've got students who are sophomores who have never touched a lighting console, pre-visiting complex lighting sequences for music videos right now.
Are they blowing you away? Are they surprising?
Oh, they're phenomenal, and they are always excited to try new things. I keep on having to update our digital light lab, at least our 3D show file, with new ads for new ideas they want to incorporate.
Awesome. How, beyond just learning how to be a streaming engineer, how are you expanding your skill set? This would be a question I'd ask you if we were not in the middle of a pandemic, but with some weird availability of time. How are you learning things?
Honestly, I think the best way that I try and learn things is by trying to accomplish new things. This weekend project of trying to find a way to do live music over Zoom isn't for any particular project. It's cool to have that skill set, but I really just emailed a couple of people who I knew and said, okay, this might be cool to put on Pixel Playhouse sometime. Do you want to go ahead and help me produce the segment and see if we have a proof of concept for this technology that we could go ahead and incorporate into something in the future? It's trying to find new, small, digestible projects that I can go ahead and learn a skill set on that I can then apply to something more complex down the line.
That's awesome. Outside of leading us down a scary path of entertainment, what hobbies keep you sane outside of this, besides, fingers on a console, computer, or wrench?
I am incredibly proud of the fact that I have not killed my balcony garden yet this year. Every year I do a new balcony garden. This time last year, it was dead. I start around March every year, so at least I've gotten over a month and a half in, and I'm feeling pretty proud. But probably the first week of lockdown, before we actually had the formal shelter-in-place order from the state of California, I went to Armstrong Garden Center and got myself 2 tomato plants and a whole array of perennial flowers. And one of the tomato plants is still alive. Unfortunately, my tomato plant skeleton, named for the eponymous Thomas skeleton, has passed away, but something new is growing in its place. So we've got skeleton 2.0. It might be a tomato, it might be a weed. I'm still watering it.
You're gonna eat it either way?
We will see. I mean, I can't grow up every day. I might as well try something new.
That's fair. Let's assume that the world recognizes what you're doing for us and all the doors are open to you. What is a bucket list project that you're eyeing?
It's always been my 10-year plan to eventually, by the time I've spent my decade building my career in Los Angeles, to be the guy people fly out to a project. So if I can find a way to regularly do that as opposed to driving to Modesto to light an opera, let's get them to pay for the plane ticket. That's the next step.
What are you reading? Who are you following?
As of the 4-wall virtual happy hour last week, I'm following a whole array of lighting designers as well right now. Mike Wood, you, Chris Warner, LimeLight Wired, and Mike Berger. And I've loved seeing the content you guys are putting out there, especially Mike Wood's pretty much practically daily streams. There's always something educational to go ahead and follow.
He's killing it.
As for what I'm reading, my students in one of my classes are actually doing a play project remotely where they're working on Stephen Massicott's Mary's Wedding. So we just read this over the last weekend. It's a very fun play to design because it's a dream play. And so we get to have great conversation in the class about, is this a dream? Is this a nightmare? What are the motifs in this that recur over and over again? And one of the foundational ways I learned how to break down a script is thinking about plays like this. And so I'm having the chance to at least talk students through how to do that right now.
Folks at LimeLight Wired have a bunch of followers. Occasionally, they post a question to the group, seeking questions for us to talk about right here. We've got one. So our first question comes from @Yep, it's Luke. Let's assume that's how he wants us to pronounce it. The question is, in prioritizing your workflow on a console, patch first, got it, then what? What is your workflow? What do you dive into after that?
Absolutely. It's always dependent on how much time you got. So if you are just getting in time to build before doors open, then flash it out real quick and make sure things turn on. If you actually have time to go ahead and build a complex like base file you want to work from, then I like to build the building blocks next. I always like to set aside a good 2 to 3 hour chunk of time in either at home in my home office or when I'm on site if I've got time to build all my palettes. I got to have all my gobos in there. I've got to have all my colors ready to call back so that at least I can quickly build looks later on. I'll also oftentimes walk in with my whole cue list ready to go, already labeled, just with empty cues and blocks already built, so that I don't need to worry about typing in labels while people are waiting for me, especially in technical course.
What is the percentage of time that you get an opportunity to even build a couple cues before showing up on site? Do you do any PreViz? Is that typical for you?
Yeah, so one of my most recent projects is also one of my longest clients. I do lighting design for the Archer School for Girls annual Night of Dance, which is typically about 20 to 25 different dance pieces, 2 tracks. And we just recently had a chance to go ahead and perform at the Broad stage with a very compressed rehearsal period. We had all of 3 days on site before we had audience members. And so for 25 thoroughly compute out numbers, that's not enough time to build everything on site. So that was my first experience working with Augment 3D. I took rehearsal video from the show, queued everything out off-site with initial ideas from Augment 3D, and then a lot of the process was just trying to find ways to automate and fix things. That whole show is also great because it's a completely time-coded show. From the geo I was operating on, I could press a go command that would trigger over OSC to QLab to start a track, which would then feed a mini timecode back to the geo to run a whole number from beginning to blackout.
There's so many words that may be new for people out there. Augmented or Augment 3D is the new platform from ETC that is EOS 3.0. It is the incorporation of a PreViz world and three-dimensional spacing of fixtures into the workflow that we all know within EOS. Let me hit you up with another one. We've got a question from @LeboM. Again, I'm hoping I say this person's name right. Without access to a physical board, is it worth learning EOS? And I ask with a smirk because you just mentioned how you do so much work before getting in the room. So what's your take on that question?
Absolutely, it's worth learning EOS. I think both from the pre-programming standpoint, having just a free NOMAD license to go ahead and pre-build a lot of effects before we walk into a venue is fantastic because it's our most limited time we have as designers, specifically light designers, is actually in the space with the lights, with the talent. So walk in with everything you need that you can do off-site before you get there is how you actually do right by them by walking in as most prepared as you can be. And on top of that, I think it's worthwhile to go ahead and be able to learn offline because you're going to eventually go into a situation where you don't have a physical console in front of you. Learning the keyboard commands is essential if you ever want to work on a show where you might put a NOMAD on a project. I do a ton of work in intimate theaters where my options are either a 2-scene preset or maybe an ETC Express, and I just loan them a NOMAD console because I can at least do the level of work with the complexity and nuance of the cues that I'd like to go ahead and put into my own designs, while also be able to work in a workflow that I'm going to be fast at and effective in because I've spent so much time behind that console. And that's typically just renting out a cheap $300 HP laptop, as well as a NOMAD license or dongle, programming that all offline with keyboard commands or on site with keyboard commands, and then letting that run a show for a month or so.
The use of NOMAD as a component on a big show, on a little show, is totally blowing my mind. A couple weeks ago, we had a chance to speak with Ann Valentino about console development on a separate project, and she shared with us that initially the intent was to have NOMAD be exactly what you described, and what they're finding is that there are shows with 20 and 30 NOMAD devices because every electrician is logging in as a user via NOMAD, and every follow spot operator is getting cue lists from them. It's very cool. So you've got to learn it. That is for you at m.lebo. Learn it.
What is the thing that you hate the most about what you do?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
To be honest, I'm going to be a very bad designer and say this, but I really hate drafting. If I can go ahead and afford to hire someone to staff out a basic drawing package, I'm going to, and I'm going to be real lazy about it too. I love actually taking the lights and making them turn on and realizing something in collaboration with directors and scenic designers in the same room. But me sitting alone at home working on a piece of drafting is the most boring thing in the world. I'm still going to go ahead and put a title block and a border on even basic things I draw for myself, just out of neurosis, but I don't enjoy it.
Interesting. I feel the opposite. I don't want to finish the drawing. That's the boring part to me, but it is the only way that I'm solving problems. So if I don't draw it, I just kind of feel like I don't know what the lights do or where they go. Okay. I'm not going to tell you who's next, but you're going to have an opportunity to ask them a question and allow them to pontificate on anything that you would like to have them pontificate about. So this doesn't have to be entertainment related. It doesn't have to be pandemic related. It doesn't have to be today related. If you could ask our next guest any question, what would you ask them?
Andrew, thanks for your time. Thanks for such an in-depth look at just how you do things. And for those of you at home, if you want to learn more about Andrew Schmedake, you can find that information at his website. For those of you at home, we genuinely appreciate that you're spending some of your time with us. If you like what we're doing so far, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to LimeLight Wired on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Slide into our DMs or comment. Let us know what you'd like to learn about on Craft and Cocktails. As for me, I'm Chris Werner. You can find me on Instagram. Before you go, here's what's coming up next week.